Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm super happy to have my good friend Karin with Little Blue Lotus Astrology with me today. She's a crowd favorite because she speaks to you in human. She can translate astrology into something that's really helpful for you and I. And that's what we're going to do today because I think you would agree that we've been through some things. We've been drugged through the mud, let's just face it. And it turns out astrology can help us understand why, and it can help us understand what we've been through and maybe help us process that might be helpful. And then what we could expect in the future. So thanks so much for joining me again, Karin. How are you?
Oh, I'm good. I'm shell shocked like the rest of us, but I'm getting through it. And as you mentioned, I had a thought the other day about some of the planetary forces that are happening in the United States chart, and I thought, wait a minute, did anybody talk about this? I don't remember anybody talking about this. This is kind of interesting. It kind of helped me see how we could have gotten to the shadow side of the other side of the election rather than the results that we were all expecting, which again, I don't think anybody was incorrect. I've been reading a lot about what people were predicting and why they were predicting it. And it's like, hey, this all makes sense. Why didn't this work? So I looked at this one particular aspect as well as the Chiron return. And I was like, God, this is huge. This is huge. So I think it all contributed to what happened and what will happen as we move through 2025. So let's just talk a little bit about the energies of Pluto and Neptune. Neptune is a lot about susceptibility, people being susceptible to the glamours and the illusions and the disillusions that may be coming to them from the outside of their life, or even self-deception kinds of things. Neptune rules magicians. Neptune rules deceit. It also rules inspiration and spirituality and artistic abilities. But I think what we were seeing through the campaign and through the election was the dark side of Neptune. The deceit, the lies, and the crowds that were susceptible to believing the deceit and the lies. So we had that going on. And then we also remember, we had the positive stuff. We had the inspiration. We had the joy from Kamala and Tim Walz. And I thought, okay, so we've got the whole spectrum of Neptune. What was happening in the United States chart with the Neptune? Well, the United States chart is having what's called a Neptune half return, which is a real technical way of saying that the Neptune in the sky is sitting on one end of a teeter-totter. The United States Neptune is sitting on the other end of the teeter-totter. So that's a lot of Neptune energy pumping back and forth. Okay, that's a lot of Neptune energy. So we had a lot of the inspiration, a lot of the enthusiasm, and we had more misinformation, disinformation, lies, deceit, and manipulation than we've maybe have ever seen before. So we had that going on. And then we had, of course, we've all talked about the Pluto return for the past couple of years. And but what was Pluto doing in the United States chart? Did it have any connection to the Neptune that was going on? And I thought, oh, wait a minute. And I put the numbers together and I thought, well, that's what we call a sextile. Now, a sextile is generally a positive aspect. It generally brings beneficial results. It's when you've got two planets that are in a certain kind of mathematical relationship. That means if you just put a little bit of effort into it, something wonderful comes out of it. But I said once before on your show that sometimes a sextile or a trine, which is another very positive aspect, a very positive energy flow between two planets in the chart, can also mean that somebody is getting away with something, and they're getting away with it very easily because that energy is very harmonious with each other. And I think the example I used on your show was a person with an alcoholic problem. You look at planets in his chart that have to do with alcoholism, and you can see that, okay, this person has a problem with alcohol, a tendency to have a problem with alcohol, tendency maybe to have an addictive kind of personality, so that this is something they should try to stay away from. But then you'll see a trine or a sextile, and that's what you see in the chart of a person with an alcohol problem, but they're functioning. They have a family, they have a job. So that's the sextile energy. That's the trine energy. It's like they have the problem, but they're getting away with it. Now, we all know that karma, at some point, we're all going to have to pay the karmic piper, but Pluto and Neptune in the sky were sextiling each other. So we have the Pluto criminality, the manipulation of mass consciousness, of how masses are thinking, huge numbers of people. And then you have the sextile to the Neptune, which is the deception, the underhandedness, the misinformation, and we had it on all levels. We had the mass movement behind Tim Walz and Kamala Harris, the happiness, the joy, the enthusiasm, the hope, and we had the very dregs. We had the very dregs, and I thought, well, I don't know. I haven't had a chance to watch a lot of your shows. I try to catch all of them, but I'm not sure if other astrologers have talked about that. But after the election, when I was groping for something to make sense to me, I saw those two and I thought, oh, maybe we need to look at this, because this might explain some of what was happening. Because as I said, it moves from the spectrum, from the ecstasy to the anguish.
God darn.
Yeah. And then I think the other thing we forgot was, and that we were really positive about, was that we have the United States is going through a Chiron return, which means the Chiron in the sky has come back to the place where the Chiron in the chart is. The wound in the United States chart, in the fourth house of the land and its people, the indigenous people, as well as the citizens of all colors, all the people that live in the United States, is where the wound is. And now whenever we have a Chiron return, that's our chance to clear up, heal the wound. Well, we all looked at that and said, yay, Kamala's going to win. We're going to be able to roll up our sleeves and really get digging in with this. But, now we're not so sure, because now it sounds like the clamp is coming down even harder. Mass deportation. Now we're going to be seeing persecution of people, transgender people, gay people, just even underserved groups that we didn't even have years ago, or that we were even aware of years ago. They're all going to be hunted, it seems, from what we've been hearing. So that Chiron return, I'm thinking, is okay. We didn't look at the dark side of what the Chiron return might be, and I think that's what we're kind of faced with now. And so I looked at what I did before on your show, and I looked at, well, what do we have coming up? And we have a couple of big planets that are changing sign. Whenever you have those big guys changing sign, it's usually an indication of a new era, a new time, a new state of consciousness. And of course, we all know about Pluto changing signs into Aquarius. We also have Neptune going into Aries in May, along with Saturn going into Aries. And in the United States chart, those two planets in Aries are going to fall at the very base of the United States chart. It can either mean something very positive, and it can mean something very destructive. Saturn and Neptune in Aries, sitting at the bottom of the United States chart in May. The last time we had that going on during a major Chiron return. So we had a lot of the civil rights, the Jim Crow laws were happening, and before that it was the Civil War. And now Saturn and Neptune and Aries in the Civil War, we did free the slaves. the slaves were freed with Saturn and Neptune in Aries. So one way to look at that would be that Neptune dissolves things. Aries is the ego. And so Neptune dissolving the ego, and Saturn in Aries, which is more of a, okay, let's make some laws that will support that dissolving of the ego. That could be the way that turns out in May for the United States, depending on what happens between now and the end of January or February. But looking ahead, Uranus changing sign into Gemini, the last time that happened was during World War II, but it also had a lot to do with, again, every time we've had a struggle in the United States to get more rights, it often has to do with the Uranus in Gemini. And so that's, the bottom line is we thought we were not going to have to fight so hard for our rights. We have another opportunity to fight for our rights, and that's where we are right now. We're like girding our loins for the big fight. That's the energy that I'm feeling. That's what I'm getting. It's like, okay, we need to pick ourselves up. We need to look at, okay, what can we do about this?
And so talk about what Chiron is. Chiron is the wounded healer. And and it's bringing us back to the wounds that the country was founded on, which would be, the founding of the country. We
Right.
did terrible things to Native Americans. We did terrible things to Black people that we brought in as slaves. So all of this, so to me, energetically, it's like you said, this all makes sense. This is like Spirit saying, you have to go back and do your homework. You didn't quite finish it. We did do the Civil War. We did free the slaves, but then we did Reconstruction. And that's when we started the whole Electoral College. So
Right.
the Electoral College is involved in this.
Right.
And it all was basically a gimme to the South, to the Southern white landowners.
And they still don't think they lost the war.
They still don't think they lost the war. So we get to go back. And I think it's interesting that the Electoral College is involved in this. I mean, because the guides just told me all this, right? So,
Wow.
Because we are going to have to look at the Electoral College. It's not fair and balanced. And I think that somehow the energy that you're talking about, to me, energetically, it's about fairness and it's about balance. And I don't know how that goes into what you're saying, but this is what Americans want, is overall. We want fair. We want, Trump has basically, there's a tyranny. The guides always call it a tyranny. There's two levels of justice here. One there's many levels, but there's one level for Americans, one level for Trump, right? So we are going to be looking at those things. And then it's kind of setting up, to me, the energy, the way, especially after the election, the way it's setting up is a sort of a civil war energy of maybe not. See, these things can all manifest when Karin says we have this energy of World War II or the Civil War or whatever. Yes, we have the energy of it, but it can manifest in so many different ways. It can manifest as a war. It can manifest as something good, she said. It can manifest in a lot of different ways. And I feel like how it's manifesting is Civil War energy is, we've seen it with the MAGAs. Now we have people getting divorced, women coming home and saying, that's it. Like, I cannot be with you anymore. Right? I'm worried about my daughters. I'm worried about my granddaughters, whatever the reason is, I cannot be with you anymore. We already know that this whole MAGA stuff has torn families apart. We've already seen that, brother against brother. That is the energy of the Civil War.
Yeah.
Right there. Yeah. And I do, unfortunately, I see a lot of divide. After the election, I see more divide than less divide. Actually, things get more
polarized.
Unfortunately. So I will just wrap it what I'm getting by saying the people cannot do this on their own. It's almost like like the government has to come in and say, you're going to behave, you're going to treat each other right, we're going to pass laws, we're going to do things to make sure that people to keep the country together. Because I don't know that I see a breaking apart of our country right now.
Right.
So how does that make sense astrologically, or does it?
I think it does make a sense astrologically, but I think also you, and this is something that you do on your show all the time, Susan, is we look at things. We also look at things in a spiritual spectrum. Okay, let's say that instead of karma, and a lot of people I think don't realize or haven't thought of the fact that these souls that were around for World War II when we were fighting fascism, those were the souls that were around during the Civil War. Those are souls that are around now, right? They're having to figure it out. And this is the best place to figure it out. The Earth plane is the best place to figure that out. So it's sort of like, if we look at it as it's a continuum, it's like, okay. And also you've mentioned on your show many times, it is a test for the rest of the Americans. How committed are we to this? You know, we were committed to fighting Hitler after Pearl Harbor, and maybe even a little bit after that, but before that, there were Americans that were siding with the Nazis. Hey, they got the trades running on time, they're having to learn that again. And we have to learn, well, how hard are we going to fight? How much of this are we going to tolerate before, like you said, somebody big puts their foot down and says, that's enough. No, and no.
And I see people doing it too, though. I do see like communities, I see people shunning, so again, like, I'm going to break up with my husband. I'm going to, whatever you're going to do, I'm not going to talk to my brother, or I'm not going to talk to my sister. So there's this shun, the guides say that we're going to start shunning, not only our family or friends, but celebrities.
Right.
Musicians, movie actors, it doesn't matter. Like, we are going to shun them because, yes, the government, so the government may or may not be out of commission.
Right.
But the lesson continues, right? It doesn't matter if the ball goes to 45 or it goes to Biden, the lesson is still going. Or if it goes to Harris, the lesson is still going. And so that's what I try to explain to people.
It's with you 100%. My mindset is that way too. It's like, you know what? If I'm talking to somebody and they tell me that, Elon Musk isn't such a bad guy, I'm like, I go home and I'm like, do I really want to be friends with that person? Do I really want to spend time with that person? And I think you're right. It's going on all over the United States on all different levels. Marriages, families, friendships, businesses, movies. Yeah, there are certain actors I'm like, I don't care how much I might want to see that movie. If he's in it, I'm not seeing that movie.
See, that's a change. That's a change.
That's a big energy shift. Yeah. And again, it's the test. Right? It's the test. How committed are we? But
these astrological big energy shifts that are happening right now, tell me a timeline. Do these things kind of shift again? I mean, I know we're going into Pluto and Aquarius, which is power to the people. Okay, let's just make it simple. Power to the people.
Right.
And then the other things that we have going, let's assign like a moniker to it or an avatar to it. There's two other shifts. There's Saturn and Uranus, right? Uranus is doing
Saturn,
something?
Uranus, and Neptune. 3.
Yeah, okay, 4. So tell me about those things. And so what is how can we explain that?
Okay, so we know about the Pluto. The next planet under Pluto is Neptune. That's going to move into Aries. So again, that can go one of two ways. Okay. I just want to mention briefly, we talk about the Aquarian age, and we don't talk about the Piscean age that we're moving out of. Well, the Piscean age, one of the main characteristics of the Piscean age is Christianity, right? It happened when Jesus was born. That's pretty much when the Piscean age started, when Jesus was born. So the biggest characteristic is there's others, but the biggest one is Christianity. And I just read the other day what the policy for the Christian nationalists was, now that it seems that Trump and Trump and Vance are in power, and they're going to, of course, there's going to be stronger religious incursions in public school. There's going to be there's legal things that they're going to try to erode that help keep the separation between church and state. There are certain laws that they're going to try to overturn. I mean, it goes on to like 4 or 5 different major things, and I'm like, oh my God, they're waiting to pounce. So 2 things that has to do with that. That is Neptune at the last degrees of Pisces, which is what it's at. And whenever we have one of those big players, those big planet players moving through the last degrees of a sign before they're changing sign, it gets really, really intense. That energy gets very, very intense. Okay. A lot of us forget about that. So Pluto in those last degrees of Capricorn, that Capricorn energy, that oppressive, capitalistic, materialistic energy, they're going to come down really hard. Neptune in Pisces, almost going into Aries, they're going to come down hard. Now, go back to what I was just saying about the Aquarian age coming out of the age of Pisces. It takes several hundred years for the age to start, maneuvering its way into being. And so a lot of us believe that the Aquarian age started around the 1700s, right? When we had all the revolutions. We had our revolution, we had the French Revolution, we had the Russian Revolution. Uranus is the force of change and radical change, revolutionary change. So we had that. And then we had during World War II, we had the production of the atomic bomb and the explosion of the atomic bomb. And that's a very Uranian kind of function. So it continued from the 1700s. And now Pluto is in Aquarius. It's like, okay, we're here. Well, but do we remember what happened when the age of Pisces began? When we moved out of the previous age to the age of Pisces, we moved out of the age of Aries, which was the age of the Roman Empire and soldiers and conquest. Now we're in the age of Pisces. How long were those Christians persecuted? How long were those persecutions went on, and how long were they hunted and tortured and put to death? There's a backlash. There's a backlash when one age changes to another age. So I think one of the things that we're seeing with the Christian nationalists who have gotten so powerful is Neptune in the last degrees of Pisces, and a big part of the backlash from moving into the Aquarian age. It's like they don't want to let go. They're not going to let go.
So when does the backlash let go? When timing wise? Is there a timing element?
Well, it can take a while. It can take decades, or depending on what else. I think that time has sped up. I think you've even mentioned that you feel time has sped up. So I don't think we're going to have to spend the same amount of time that we spent trying to keep the Christians alive that we're going to have to do now. I think it's much, much quicker. But to give you a time frame, I don't know if I can.
So this is the energy we're dealing with. So regardless of anything else, we're dealing with this grabbing of the power. It feels like this Christianity grabbing of the power, like seizing. The word I'm getting is seizing the power. Mm-hmm. And there's a sense of finality to it. Like it's now or never. Like we do it now and we seize it, and then we can hold it. If we don't, and this is how I feel also, they're showing me about the whole 45 thing. It's like all these people have shown their cards, the Heritage Foundation, all these people, Harlan Crow, everybody, we now see the SCOTUS, Supreme Court, we see now your cards. You are exposed as to who you are. And they are willing to expose themselves because they realize this is it. It's now or never. We must seize it now, or we're going to lose it. We're going to be on the slippery slope to not having the power. Forever. Is that your kitty? Forever, right? Forever. Is that your kitty I hear in the background?
Yeah. Yeah. Aww. She wants me to play with her.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, so, I mean, what I see is a fracas. The guides are calling it a fracas, a fight, a series of fights, like you said earlier. What do we want? What are we going to choose?
Mhm.
Are we really serious that we don't want that we don't want church and state to be in the same,
Mhm.
all mixed together? Well, sure, our country is founded on that, but how do we feel about it? It's almost like we get an opportunity to go back
Exactly.
again to the founding of the country and say, how do we feel about all these things? Do we want these things? See, I don't know. And I don't know who my fellow Americans are. That I think is probably the biggest thing that's been destabilizing, is all of a
Mhm.
sudden I don't know who they are. I really don't. I thought we all agreed on the rules, and
Mhm.
now you're saying you want to change all the rules, and your ideas are just kind of out there for me. So that's very interesting. And then the Neptune would be the part where they were coerced or able
They were
to
fooled,
fooled,
disillusioned. Yeah,
disillusioned,
lied to.
right?
Right.
And where
Right.
does Saturn fit in? Because Saturn is the karma, the god, lord of
Right.
karma, right? And
Right.
and also time and rules and restrictions. Where
Yeah.
does Saturn fit in with
Well,
all of this?
it's in the sign of Pisces, and it will be going out, but then moving back and forth pretty much most of 2025. But I think Saturn in Pisces was, first of all, it's the end of an era because it's the last sign of the zodiac. So Saturn has traveled through all of them, and now he's traveling through Pisces before we have a new beginning. And the Saturn is right. The Saturn is the taskmaster. The Saturn is, okay, we're going to strip away the illusions. We're going to rub your nose in what you thought you believed in. That, people, I read that the first week after the election, the most Googled question was, what are tariffs? I'm like,
Come on
whoa,
again.
okay, now they're wondering what tariffs are. Well, it's a little too late. But that's that Saturn. It's like, well, wait a minute. Now I'm learning about what a tariff is and how everything that I buy at Walmart is going to be 25 or 30% or 40% more money. And I can't afford my groceries now. They're freaking out. So, yeah, Saturn is like, if you didn't dot the I or cross the T, we're going to make sure you see that and work at it until it is dotted and crossed.
So I get it. So Saturn is, when I said earlier, you have to go back and finish your homework. Saturn is the planet that's going to make us go back and finish our homework
Right.
because it's going to be very apparent. But how is Saturn in Pisces? I mean, how does Saturn like Pisces? Because Pisces is watery and very
Yeah,
different
no,
than Saturn.
they're not friendly. It's not a friendly combination, Saturn and Pisces. Pisces is a fish. You never try to catch a fish with your bare hands. And so Saturn is grabbing that fish and saying, no, 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 you have to stay right here. You can't tell me a story. You can't, you have to, you've got to do what you have to do. So, yeah, it's not a very friendly combination, but it's definitely can be productive of something that's very positive, or it also can be, I think it can drive people even further into their fantasies and their delusions
Oh,
because they
wow.
really don't want to face reality.
Right.
So
I saw that. Okay, that makes sense. I saw in 2025 this sort of increase in people. I mean, the word the guides want to use is being delusional, but I mean, how I would describe it is I could see, and I'm not against this. I'm just saying that I could see marijuana getting
yeah,
legalized throughout the United States for a lot of reasons. For one thing, let's keep everybody cool and chill
yeah.
because people are really upset. And for another thing,
Mhm.
people need to be, they need this. They need a way to calm down. They need a way to escape. Much like during the 30s, gambling and drinking and
Prohibition, yeah.
all that stuff, even during Prohibition, it was
Mhm.
rampant, right? Everybody was doing it. And so I feel like in 2025, Americans are going to want to check out more. So they
Right,
might be, I mean, in a bad way, not in a good way, but in a
right,
vice sort of
right,
way. Like,
right.
I don't have any money, so I'm going to go ahead and gamble what I do have. Or
Mhm.
I'm going to go ahead and just be high all the time, or I'm going to go ahead and eat all the time. It's just an escape. And that can be Pisces. Now, when we talk about signs,
Totally Pisces, right?
we're not saying that all Pisces are like this. We're not saying all Capricorns are like whatever she described. We're saying that the energy that I'm picking up on is that. Now, you can be a Pisces that's worked through the Pisces things, because this is what we all do. I'm a Virgo that's worked through my Virgo. People don't see me as a Virgo because I've worked really hard on working through whatever the lower vibrational aspects are of my chart, of my whole chart. So I'm not trying to demean Pisces. I'm simply saying that when things get really tough for Americans and we don't feel like we have an answer, and we can't explain it, we can't explain why this is happening, we're going to tune out. And then Saturn's going to come in and say, no, you don't. So you're going to have this energy of people wanting to escape, and then Saturn probably through prices going up or unrest, civil unrest. So you see, this is how these planets can use the tools at hand. Saturn says, nope, we're going to throw cold water on your face. So you can see what's happening, because you've got to deal with this.
Yeah. The way I picture it is, I picture Saturn like grabbing somebody by the scruff of the neck and going, no. Look at the mess you made. You got to clean that up, and you can't have dinner until you cleaned it up.
Right. Look at it. Look at it. I just get this, look at what you've done.
Yeah.
Look at what's happening here. You cannot unsee this. You cannot escape. Pisces, escape. Saturn, no, you're not going to escape. So even if Biden, some miracle thing happens, and Harris or Biden or whatever happens, even if it's a Democratic presidency, we still have the same lessons.
Right.
We still have the same lessons. And it's going to be better because we're not going to be deporting people. But then we have the lesson around how that lesson would then manifest would be, instead of having, Trump deporting people, then you have states deporting people. Right. And challenging the government. So the lessons are there, you guys. You really can't escape these lessons. It's really about, how do I deal with it? How do I work through it? Right. How do I own my own autonomy? How do I stay sane and as a human, a productive human during this time?
Exactly.
Because you can. You can. We did. We had 4 years of Trump. We saw kids in cages. We did it. We just have to. We need to do that again, but this time be more active and vocal in protecting people that are at risk.
Right. I think what happened between 2016 and 2020 is we were constantly stunned with like a dozen things a day.
Yes.
And before we could act on any one of those 12, the next day happened and there's 12 more.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That was all planned.
People are mobilizing. Yeah.
But I think Saturn is going to, this is different, you guys. I really think this is different with Saturn being involved. I don't think we're going to we're not just going to be able to ignore this. That's what the guide said. Regardless of what happens, we will not be able to ignore this. And the more we ignore it, the bigger a problem it gets.
Right. And you've been talking recently about the bully energy, and Aries, the shadow side of Aries can be quite a bully. And Saturn in Aries can mean Saturn putting limits on, no, bullying behavior is not tolerated, and these are the consequences for bullying behavior. Or Saturn can crystallize the bully behavior and say, okay, now we've got it codified. We have laws that protect bullies. So it can kind of go either way, Susan. But again, it comes down to our commitment. That's what I believe. It comes down to our commitment.
Humans. It comes down to humans. Yeah. And I don't see us. Okay, so how I could see that manifesting is in the states. I could see certain red states codifying less rights and more authoritarianism, so to speak. And the guides are saying red states, and I live in a red state, right? But red states have, their citizens have been pummeled and pummeled and pummeled and pummeled till they kind of take whatever the state gives them. They're just not going to stand up and fight back so easily. So
yeah, like an abused woman in a relationship,
like an abused woman or a child, right? Like just go along to get along. So I can see some progress made towards that crystallizing of the bullying energy in red states. I can see that, but I don't see it from the top down. I don't see that kind of control over all of our country, because the blue states are going to wall off and protect themselves. So I kind of see this energy again. The guides just keep telling me the top, even if Trump is in, it's mockery. Look at who his cabinet is. It's a mockery.
Yeah.
It can't organize anything. However, this same astrological energy could really settle down into the red states and cause more harm, more authoritarian energy in the red states.
Right. The placement of the Saturn and Neptune in Aries, that's going to happen in May, remember, is at the base of the United States chart, at the very bottom of the chart. It's the foundation of the country, basically. So which way will it manifest?
If we get, so let's give us 2 years. Let's say, I'm not giving you anybody false hope. Let's just say that in 2 years, we can get us a new Congress, and then all of a sudden, and actually, that's how we can do it. Oh, I'm so glad they told me that. Okay, let's just say 45 gets in 2 years, we would truly get a completely filibuster-proof, veto-proof Congress. And that Congress would pass laws that 45 could not veto. He would not be able to override their votes. This is how we get out of this. This is why I've seen it changes in 2 years. I didn't realize how until just now. So that's how we would say, no, we're not doing this. We're not going to do this because Americans don't want this, right? Americans just don't want this.
No, I don't think so. And yeah, by November of 2026, Uranus is now, we didn't talk about Uranus in Gemini and the Uranus return of the United States. Now Uranus is going to be in Gemini, and it will have been for a while, for the next 2 years. And so the Uranus return for the United States is a radical change. It's waking up. And it's in the sign of Gemini, which has a lot to do with communicating and organizing and, relating with each other.
And twins, like this and that, like this kind of twin energy. So Uranus, I'm sorry, tell me again, when does that come into play?
Okay, so Uranus is going to go into Gemini. Not until, looks like not until April of 2026. No, that's wrong. Hang on. They move back and forward. Okay, the first time it goes into Gemini is in July of 2025. And it'll be in there for a few months. It'll go back into Taurus, it'll come back out into Gemini and stay in Gemini, though, well before November of 2026. So it'll be established in the fall of 2026, which means the United States will be going through their Uranus return in 2025, 2026, which is waking up the people, waking up the sleeping giant. Yeah.
Shake you up to wake you up.
Shake you up to wake you up. Yeah. Yeah.
And sudden. Okay.
Yeah.
So
and radical, like from black to white.
Oh, and overnight. Like another thing is turning the light on and off. Like you said, it goes from dark to light. Like
right. Yeah. It's a lightning bolt. Yeah.
It's a lightning bolt. So that's in 2026, right around. Plus, we're going to be experiencing that energy off and on even next year.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I'm getting chills on this. So I feel like this is a big deal. I feel like Uranus in, tell me again,
Gemini.
Uranus in
Gemini.
Gemini.
Mhm.
Yes, this is a very big deal. This, if 45 gets in, this is the end of him in some way.
You think we'll have to wait that long, huh?
If he gets in, I don't want to give you guys false hope. I don't think he's going to get in, but I would tell you that it again, I'll say it one more time. It doesn't matter. The lessons are the lessons.
Yeah.
It matters to me because I love Kamala Harris and I would
Yeah.
like to not deport people. And I'd like to just have her go to battle with the states and learn our lesson that way. You know what I mean? Rather than have to learn it with 45 being out to lunch up there and just letting
Yeah.
the states do whatever they and there's no guardrails. And then you know who the guardrail is? Me and you.
Yeah.
We're the only guardrails. Now it's on us to get out there. One side of the lesson is we get out there and protest. We get out there and hold arms and we protect. The other side is Kamala Harris with the government goes against the states. There's going to be a role for humans to play in all of this because humans are the reason we're the lesson. The lesson is not the executive branch, it's us. But either way, it's the same thing. We have to get together. And I feel like the more humans do this, the more we shun businesses, the more we share with, black and brown folks, don't go to that shop. That guy's a racist.
Yeah.
We share the information. We create safe, almost like directories.
Right. I've been seeing those things happening on Facebook.
Have you really?
Yeah. Yeah. Tell us if you're safe with transgender and gay people.
Yes.
Lists of businesses to stay away from and lists of businesses that supported Harris and Walz. It's like, here it is in black and white.
There it is, right there. I didn't know that was happening on all places on Facebook. But this is what I'm saying. It's black and white. We're not even going to entertain the thought of going to your shop or your store or your business or your concert. It is over. Finale, right? So that I think that's going to shock the MAGAs. I think they're going to be the ones saying, come on, be reasonable. There's no reasonable. We're done.
Yeah.
We're done.
I know a lot of us have been hearing, and get over it, just like they were saying in 2016, get over it.
No.
And I'm like, I'm waiting for someone to tell me to get over it because I'm going to remind them about how they got over it.
Right. And they still have rebel flags. They're still not over the Civil War. And they want me to get over.
Get over it.
No. Yeah, that's insanity. Anything else you want to share with everybody? Just tell us it's going to be okay.
Of course it's going to be okay.
We need hopium.
Yeah. It is going to be okay. I mean, we're seeing it on threads and Facebook and conversations and articles and our personal friends and our personal communities, how everybody is girding their loins and saying, we got this. I don't see a lot of laying down and rolling over anymore. I mean, there was a little bit of that shock after the election, but I think now everybody's just getting up and going, okay, what's next? What do we need to do? I did want to make a pitch for a Bach flower essence that is really good for shock, loss, and grief. If
Bach, B-A-C-H, tell me about what you're...
Well, Dr. Bach was a surgeon in World War II, a British surgeon during World War II, and he was very psychic. And he also had one of those magnificent gardens that the British often have. And he noticed that his flowers, certain flowers he could see their energy, he could feel their energy, he could interpret what the flowers were. So he made tinctures of, I think there's 38 different tinctures of single flowers. And a lot of us know about the rescue remedy. You've
Oh
heard of
yeah,
rescue remedy?
for
Yeah,
dogs.
for dogs and people. And that was Dr.
You
Bach.
did that stuff? Okay, I already ate her dog cookies. I'm fixing to
Yeah.
go in the cabinet right now. I got some rescue remedy for her. I can take her rescue remedy because I'm gonna be like, okay, here you go,
Well,
Zoe.
it was originally for people, and then they realized it worked for animals. So the people came first, and then
Nobody ever told me these things.
oh yeah, Dr. Bach was wonderful. So, but the rescue remedy was I think the only remedy he made that has, I think, 7 flowers in it. And he made it specifically for the boys that were coming in off the battlefield. He was a battlefield surgeon, sort of like on MASH, these broken boys coming in and the bombs exploding right outside the tent. And so he made the rescue remedy for the boys coming in, for the trauma to their spirit, their minds, their emotions, and their body. But there are a bunch of other flower essences, and Star of Bethlehem is the one that helps with shock, loss, and grief. So if you want to take Star of Bethlehem, and they're homeopathic remedies, which means there are no side effects, and you cannot overdose on them. I think the only side effect that I know about is that your dreams can get very vivid. They're not nightmares, but they're just like very vivid. But there are no side effects. So Star of Bethlehem for shock, loss, and grief to help us get out of that, oh my God, what just happened? Oh my God, I don't know what to do next. That feeling of being paralyzed. Star of Bethlehem. I don't know. Trump's got some pretty bad aspects, but we've talked about that before, and the man just keeps on ticking.
But he's got even worse aspects next year, I think.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. But
I mean, next year he has really bad aspects.
I was with you even a few years ago. I didn't think he'd survive to be on the ticket in 2020.
Nope, me either. But here we are. Wonder why? Because he's here to teach us our lesson, you guys.
Exactly.
That's why.
I think
he's so good at it.
Said, hey, I think I know why he's still around. And you said, yes, I just did a video on that. We still have to learn the lesson. We have to really clean up this time.
Or move or do a lot more work. You know what I mean? Yeah. I don't think we're going to be finished, because I think Earth is never finished. But I think we can do a lot more work.
Right. I mean, Uranus and Gemini has a lot to do with communication. And when we look at the Black Lives Matter movement, people with their cell phones out, it's like, you can't get away with stuff. If you're gonna be doing something oppressing my brother or my sister, no matter what color or what sexual preference they have, we're filming it, and we're going to gather, and we're going to make our voices known. And you've said it for a whole year. People in the streets.
That's been a game changer. Those videos have gotten cops to go to prison. Those videos took a lot of Jan 6ers and put them in prison. So you're right that Uranus Gemini is that lightning bolt communication.
Great tool. And I think that probably adds a lot to, as we're both saying, people's readiness to mobilize, to do something about it. Because, in the 40s and 50s, we didn't even have TV. We had the radio to talk to us about World War II, what was going on in the newspapers. And so now it's like, it's instant. It's happening, and you're getting it right away. And you're making decisions. Hey, throw the dog in the car. We're driving down to so-and-so because we're protesting such and such. That couldn't have happened before. So there's more of us to mobilize, and it's easier for us to,
to mobilize.
Yeah.
Right. And that's why, and I don't want this video to keep going on and on, because we could talk about this forever, but that's why they bought Twitter and took Twitter offline. Because when I was on Twitter in the beginning of my experience with Twitter, what I loved about it was there could be a guy standing in a country and video filming with his phone a black helicopter landing on a roof 2 roofs away, and report that. And Twitter was the great equalizer of news, right? You could talk to a general, you could talk to a person who wrote for the New York Times. It was just this equalizer. Well, guess what? They bought it, they took it offline, they ruined it. And even during this election on Threads, you couldn't say the most simple things. You couldn't I mean, forget election. Sometimes you couldn't say very simple things.
Oh, wow.
Your post would get taken down. So Uranus and Gemini is also about shutting down communication.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
interruptions in communication. Yeah.
Interruptions in communication, right? So I mean, these things go up and down. This is what we're trying to teach you guys, is there's no 100% this is going to happen and it's going to happen this way. It's free will, and the energy can also go up and down depending on our actions.
Right. And the lessons that we keep repeating are not, as you just mentioned, they're not on the same level. You know, I always feel, and I think probably even from the symbol that you use for your show, the spiral, our evolution is on a spiral. So the lessons that the Civil War people learned with all the bloodshed is that spiral is behind us or below us. And now, you know, we're on a different spiral. So we're learning it a different way. It's a more subtle way. There's not a lot of blood in the streets or the fields with all those battles, but it's still a similar lesson.
It's a similar lesson because brothers aren't speaking to brothers, sisters aren't speaking to fathers.
People are getting divorced.
Right. It's that. So the energy manifested the way it could manifest to teach us the lesson. Mm-hmm. So, you know, it's so you really, I want you guys to pay attention to that. And the last thing too is you might look into, how did Germans come to terms with Hitler? How did they come to terms with each other? How did they come to terms with the atrocities that were had? Because I'm not saying these atrocities are happening in the United States, but I'm saying we have to at some point have to come to terms with each other. How did Civil War era families ever make amends? How did Germans make amends? How did South Africa with Nelson Mandela make amends?
Right.
This is where you can learn. If you want to learn how other countries, how other people and other times have dealt with this energy, you can go to those topics and look at it, and you might start to envision for yourself, and it might calm you down to say, hey, this country, they put their differences aside, and all three of those situations were much worse.
Yes.
Much bloodier, much more horrible than our situation. If they can do it, we can do it.
We can do it. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Karin, for coming on. If you guys want to know more about her, she does have a YouTube channel. It's Little Blue Lotus Astrology. Yeah. And her website is littlebluelotus.org. She is very booked up. She's actually booked up into spring of next year because that's just how good she is. But do check out her YouTube channel when she has time. She is there, and she's always welcome to come back to my channel because I so enjoy chatting with you, and I think that you bring such value to us with your astrology knowledge, and you put it to us in such a way that's understandable. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Susan. I love being here. Thanks.
You are so welcome. All right, everybody, you guys take really good care. Like the guide said earlier, you're on the clock as a human. That's what they told me. You're on the clock as a human. The Earth is your job. Get busy. That's what they told me. I'm like, can I clock out? They're like, yeah, at the end. At the end, you clock out, but you got a while. So,
oh my God.
At the end, yeah, you're on the clock until the end. And that's like your last breath. So basically, get up off the floor, your little pity party, stop crying, and get your gear.
Quit whining.
Get busy. Quit whining and get busy. So that's what the guides told me. So I'm just going to share it with you too. Okay, y'all take really good care.
God.
For entertainment purposes only.